Close your eyes for a moment and listen. Can you hear it? The rhythmic pounding of hammers shaping metal, the distant braying of donkeys bringing goods from the countryside, the melodic calls of merchants hawking their wares in a dozen different languages. That mix of scents drifting through the air, freshly baked bread, exotic spices from the east, the earthy smell of leather, and the sharp tang of fish sauce. This isn't just background noise, this is the heartbeat of the greatest empire the world has ever known. Welcome to the Roman marketplace, where fortunes are made, secrets are traded, and every day brings new mysteries waiting to be uncovered. I stand here amidst this controlled chaos, my hands stained with the dust of grain and my mind filled with the day's calculations. As a Roman market trader, I'm not just a seller of goods, I'm a keeper of stories, a witness to history unfolding in the bustling forums and crowded streets of ancient Rome. From the first light of dawn, when we arrange our stalls, to the final moments before the gates close, we traders are the lifeblood of this magnificent city. We hear the whispers before they reach the Senate, we feel the economic tremors before they shake the empire, and we see the human drama play out in the exchange of coins and goods. Today I invite you to step through time and stand beside me in this vibrant world. Together we'll navigate the crowded alleys where silk from China meets amber from the Baltic, where Egyptian papyrus is traded for Spanish olive oil. We'll uncover the hidden codes in merchant agreements, decode the secret messages passed between traders, and discover how commerce shaped the destiny of Rome itself. This isn't just about buying and selling, it's about understanding how the ancient world connected, communicated, and conspired right here in the marketplace. So take a deep breath, feel the warm Mediterranean sun on your skin, and prepare to experience a day in the life of a Roman market trader, where every transaction tells a story and every customer might just hold the key to Rome's greatest mysteries. The first light of dawn doesn't so much as greet me as it startles me awake. It's a thin gray sliver that cuts through the single small window of my room, high up in the insula. That's the grand name for my home, a towering apartment block of wood and brick, crammed with the sounds and lives of dozens of other families. My bed is a simple straw mattress on a wooden frame, and the morning chill is already seeping into my bones. There's no gentle awakening here in Rome. The city announces the new day with a relentless symphony of noise from the street below. The rumble of the first cartwheels on cobblestones, the urgent shouting of a water seller, the barking of a dog, it all echoes up the narrow light well, a constant reminder that the city never truly sleeps, it just takes a short breath before starting again. My morning routine is a lesson in simplicity born of necessity. There's no running water up here on the 4th floor. I splash my face from a clay jug, the water bracingly cold, and pull on my simple woolen tunic. It's a far cry from the fine linen of the wealthy in their hilltop villas, but it's sturdy and practical for the long day of work ahead. I don a leather apron, still marked with stains from yesterday's trade, a splash of olive oil, a dusting of grain. These are my badges of honor. Breakfast is a hurried affair, a piece of stale bread dipped in watered-down wine, a meal that is more about function than pleasure. It's enough to quiet my stomach and give me the energy to face the hours to come. As I chew, I can already feel the familiar buzz of anticipation building. Down in the street, I hear the distinct call of my neighbor, a fuller heading to his workshop. The clatter of a pot from the apartment below signals another family beginning their day. We are all cogs in the great machine of Rome, and the market is our engine. Stepping out of my building is like being swallowed by the city itself. The narrow street is a river of humanity already flowing toward the Forum. I join the current, my mind no longer on the humble room behind me but racing ahead to the marketplace. I mentally review my inventory, the amphory of wine from Campania that should arrive today, the price of Egyptian lentils, the delicate glassware from a Syrian merchant that needs careful handling. This daily walk is my time to strategize, to plan my pitches, to anticipate the moods of my customers. The air, still cool and carrying the scent of baking bread from a nearby bakery, fills me with a sense of purpose. I am not just a man walking to work, I am a merchant and negotiator, a vital thread in the vast and intricate economic tapestry of the empire. Every step brings me closer to the chaos and the opportunity, to the place where a sharp mind and an honest measure can build a livelihood. The market is calling, and I am ready to answer. The journey to the Forum is a world unto itself, a daily pilgrimage through the very veins of the empire. I don't so much walk as I am carried along by the current of the city's life, a single fish in a vast teeming school. The narrow vici, our city streets, are a chaotic dance of movement and sound. I have to press myself against a sun-warmed brick wall to let a litter carried by 4 burly slaves jog past, the silk curtain within fluttering and a perfumed scent lingering in its wake. A moment later, a flock of sheep being driven to market surrounds me, their bleating and the sharp calls of the shepherd filling the air with the smell of the countryside. Above it all, the constant chatter of 1,000 conversations in Latin, Greek, Aramaic, and languages I don't even recognize creates a hum that is the true voice of Rome. This route is a lesson in the stark contrast of our society. One moment I'm passing the soaring, marble-columned facade of a temple, its steps crowded with priests and petitioners. The next I'm ducking into a shadowy alleyway between towering insulae, where the upper floors lean so close together they almost blot out the sky. From the open windows above, the sounds of family arguments, a baby crying, and the sizzle of morning cooking rain down upon us. A sudden cascade of wastewater from a second-story window sends our entire stream of pedestrians scattering with a unified shout of complaint, a daily hazard we've all learned to anticipate. I see the faces of Rome here, the wealthy senator with his nose wrinkled in distaste, the hard-eyed legionary on leave, the foreign merchant with his exotic dress, and the countless slaves rushing to complete their master's errands, their eyes fixed on the ground. We're all equal in this river of humanity, all subject to the same jostling and noise, and then the world opens up. The narrow streets give way to the vast, breathtaking space of the Forum Romanum. It's not just a market, it's the beating heart of the empire, and you can feel its power the moment you step into its expanse. To my left stands the Grand Rostra, where orators already gather, their voices rising in passionate debate. To my right, the pristine temples of the gods gleam in the morning sun, a reminder that divine favor is sought for even the most earthly of pursuits. The air itself changes here. It's still thick with the smells of food, humanity, and incense, but it's charged with a palpable energy, a mix of ambition, opportunity, and sheer human endeavor. This is where laws are made, gods are worshipped, justice is sought, and most importantly for me, where commerce thrives. Finding my usual spot near the basilica, Julia, is a ritual in itself, a claiming of my small piece of this magnificent chaos, ready to add my own voice to the greatest market on earth. Securing my spot is the first battle of the day, a delicate dance of tradition and territoriality. This patch of ground near the Basilica Julia isn't officially mine, not in any legal sense. Its ownership is based on something far more ancient and powerful in the marketplace, unwritten custom and the mutual respect of my fellow traders. Arriving late just once could mean finding a cheeky fig seller from the Subura has laid claim to my precious few square feet of cobblestones, and the ensuing argument would cost me the entire morning's trade. So I am always among the first to arrive, my presence a quiet daily reaffirmation of my right to be here. I exchange nods with the same faces I see every morning, a silent language of acknowledgement that says, "This is your place and that is mine." With my territory secure, the real work begins. My cart, left overnight under the watchful, paid eye of a temple slave for safekeeping, is hauled into position. Unloading is a practice ritual. The amphorae of wine and olive oil, sealed with cork and pitch, are the heaviest and most fragile, so they go down first, nestled securely against the cart's wheel to prevent a costly disaster. Next come the sacks of grain and lentils, their rough textures and earthy smell a promise of sustenance. Finally, the more valuable items are carefully unwrapped from their protective linens, the delicate glass bowls from Syria, their colors catching the first true rays of the sun, and the fine Samian ware pottery with its glossy red finish. Each item is placed with intention. The most eye-catching pieces go at the front and on a small wooden stand to elevate them above the dust of the street. This isn't just stacking goods, it's crafting a scene of abundance and quality. A disorganized stall suggests disorganized thinking, and no Roman housewife trusting her husband's hard-earned denarii will buy from a mess. This early morning hour is also when the real network of the market thrives, a hidden economy of favors and futures. The cheese seller to my left, Aulus, offers me a small taste of a new pecorino he's just received from Etruria. It's sharp and salty, and I make a mental note to recommend it to my wealthier clients. In return, I let him know the shipment of garum I was expecting from Pompeii has been delayed by spring rains washing out the via Appia, crucial information that affects his own plans for a fish pie he's promoting. Across the way, Lydia, who sells fine linens, borrows my knife to cut a piece of twine and promises to send any customers looking for kitchen wares my way. This isn't just friendliness, it's a survival strategy. We are a community bound by shared struggle and opportunity. We watch for thieves for each other, share news of incoming shipments, and create a web of trust that makes the vast, impersonal market feel like a neighborhood. Presentation is everything. Once the goods are laid out, the final transformation begins. I dust the shoulders of each amphora to make the clay gleam. I arrange a few copper sestertii artfully in a small bronze scale, not because I'm selling money, but because the glint of metal draws the eye. I might even lay out a small, fine linen cloth and place a single, perfect glass bowl upon it, setting it apart as something special, worthy of a patrician's table. The goal is to create a tableau that tells a story of quality and reliability before I even utter a word. In a sea of competing vendors, all shouting for attention, my stall must whisper of value and trust. It must promise the customer that here, they will get their full measure, a fair price, and goods that won't disappoint when they get them home. The sun is fully up now, the heat beginning to build, and the first customers are trickling into the forum. The stage is set, the performance is about to begin. The world of the Roman marketplace is a perfect mirror of the empire itself, a meticulously ordered social pyramid where everyone has their place. At the very top, you'll rarely see them sweating in the sun, but their influence is everywhere. These are the negotiators and mercators, the elite merchant bankers who finance entire shipping fleets. They might be dealing in massive shipments of Egyptian grain destined for the state dole, or financing a mining operation in Hispania for silver and copper. Their transactions happen in the shaded porticos of the grand basilicas, over cups of fine wine, their deals sealed with wax tablets and handshakes that involve sums of money I couldn't earn in a lifetime. They are often equestrians, just a step below senators in status, and they move through the forum with an air of unquestioned authority, their clients and slaves swirling around them. To a humble stall keeper like me, they are almost like gods, distant, powerful, and largely unconcerned with the world of figs and fish sauce. Then there are the denarii, the shopkeepers with permanent premises lining the edges of the forum. They have solid stone counters and a roof over their heads, a mark of stability and greater success. The baker with his brick oven, the jeweler with his goods locked safely away at night, the bar owner serving hot food and wine. These are the established middle class of the market. There's a friendly rivalry between us, the stallholders, and them. We might have slightly lower prices, but they have the permanence and comfort that attracts a more consistent, often wealthier, clientele. I dream of one day earning enough to rent a taberna, to not have to set up and break down my life every single day, to have a door I can lock, and then at my level are the rest of us. We are the vicani, the stallholders, and the cercitors, the ambulatory sellers who carry their goods on their backs, shouting their wares through the streets. My status is a complex thing. To a slave or a freedman with no stall of his own, I am a figure of some small authority, a man with his own business and stock. But to a wealthy negotiator or even a well-off tabernarius, I am decidedly small fry. This social hierarchy dictates every single interaction. When a patrician matron approaches my stall, my tone shifts immediately to one of utmost respect. I call her Domina, my lady, and my gestures become more deliberate, my explanations more detailed. I know her custom is valuable, but her good opinion and the possibility of her recommending me to her circle is invaluable. Conversely, when a fellow stallholder haggles, it's a quicker, more direct exchange, a battle of wits between equals. This invisible structure creates a constant, low hum of calculation beneath the market's noisy surface. You learn to read a person's status in an instant, from the quality of their tunic's hem and the style of their sandals to the number of slaves in their retinue. Addressing a wealthy equestrian as if he were a common pleb could end your business. Forgetting to show the proper deference to a wealthy freedman, who often possesses a prickly pride about his hard-won status, could lose you a loyal customer. Your place in this hierarchy determines everything: the suppliers who will extend you credit, the quality of the goods you can access, and even the protection you can expect from the aediles, the market magistrates, if a dispute arises. It is a world of delicate balances, where a respectful nod can open doors and a misplaced word can close them forever. Survival here depends as much on understanding the social currents as it does on knowing the price of grain. The true art of the marketplace begins not with the sale, but with the study of the crowd. My voice is my most valuable tool, and I wield it with the precision of a craftsman. It's not about shouting the loudest that just brands you as a common hawker. It's about pitching your call to cut through the din without screaming, to sound inviting rather than desperate. For the wealthy matron, I might adopt a more measured, informative tone, highlighting the provenance of my goods. Finest garum domina, straight from the workshops of Pompeii, aged for a full year. You can taste the complexity. For the busy household cook sent by her master, my pitch is quicker, focusing on value and reliability. You won't find a better price for Egyptian lentils today, I swear by Jupiter's stone. Your master's purse will thank you. Haggling is the heartbeat of every transaction, a ritual dance as old as trade itself. The first price I name is never the price I expect to receive. It's an opening move in a game of wits and wills. I watch a customer's eyes. If they linger on the Syrian glassware a moment too long, I know that's their desire and I can use it. If their fingers subtly check the weight of a coin purse, I understand their budge. It is a concern. A good haggler reads these tiny signals. A flicker of doubt, a suppressed smile of delight, these are the clues that guide my strategy. I might feign reluctance to lower a price, clutching my heart as if wounded, only to relent for such a valued and perceptive customer. It's a performance and we are both players in it, each understanding our role. The goal is not to rob the customer blind, but to arrive at a price that leaves us both feeling victorious. A cheated customer never returns, a fairly haggled one becomes a regular face. My strategies shift completely based on who stands before me. A visiting provincial official, flush with coin and eager to impress, is often willing to pay a higher price for the story behind an item, the exotic journey of a spice, or the famous artisan who crafted a piece of pottery. For him I sell the narrative of Rome itself. Conversely, a grizzled legionary veteran on a pension counts every as with a shrewd, no-nonsense glare. With him I am direct, honest, and firm, offering a fair price immediately to earn his respect. He values blunt integrity over flattering theatrics. Then there's the other merchants. When Lydia from the linen stall comes over, our haggling is a rapid-fire exchange of insider jokes and final offers, concluded with a laugh. It's a transaction between colleagues who trust each other's word implicitly. The language of persuasion is a subtle art. I never simply say something is good. It's the peak of flavor, uncommonly durable, or prized by the most discerning households on the Palatine Hill. I use flattery, but it must feel genuine. Complimenting a customer's eye for quality or their shrewd bargaining skill puts them in a positive frame of mind and makes them more receptive. I might create a sense of scarcity. I only have 2 amphorae of this Falernian wine left, and I doubt they'll last the hour, or leverage social proof. The cook for Senator Valerius himself buys these very lentils for me every market day. Every word, every gesture, every pause is calculated not to trick, but to build a connection, to demonstrate the value of my goods and my own character as a merchant. A successful sale isn't just an exchange of goods for coin. It's the forging of a tiny, temporary alliance, a moment of mutual agreement in the glorious, chaotic theater of the Roman market. Competition in the Forum is a constant simmering pressure, a silent war fought with smiles, quality, and the subtle art of the deal. It is never a simple matter of setting up a stall and waiting for customers. It is a daily campaign for attention and trust in a field crowded with other ambitious traders. The man selling olives 3 stalls down is not just a neighbor, he is my rival. The woman offering pottery from Gaul is not merely another merchant, she is a challenger for the same limited pool of coins. This rivalry is not born of malice but of necessity. In a place where a family's next meal depends on the day's takings, the friendly face you share a joke with at dawn can become your fiercest competitor by noon. Differentiation is my primary weapon in this quiet conflict. I cannot win a shouting match, so I must win a quality match. My olive oil is not just oil, it is a first-pressed green gold nectar from a specific hillside in Baetica that I can name for my customers. My garum is not just fish sauce, It is the product of a small producer in Pompeii known for a hint of a particular herb that elevates a simple dish. I make it my business to know these stories, to be able to trace the journey of a honey jar from a beekeeper in Hymettus to my stall in Rome. This isn't just a sales tactic, it is the foundation of my reputation. When a customer asks how my lentils differ from those sold 2 rows over, I can speak with authority about the soil they were grown in and the ship that carried them. I sell trust and provenance as much as I sell goods. Then there are the price wars, the most dangerous and destructive form of competition. They usually start with a newcomer, desperate to establish a foothold, who slashes his prices to an unsustainable low. It creates an immediate toxic ripple effect. Customers, always looking for the best deal, flock to his stall, leaving the rest of us staring at our unsold stock. The temptation to match his price is overwhelming, but it is a trap. Engaging in a race to the bottom only ensures everyone loses, bleeding coin until one of us is forced to close. My strategy is to never engage directly. Instead, I double down on my narrative of quality. I might calmly explain to a curious customer that while yes, his price is lower, my lentils are a different, heartier variety that cooks more evenly and offers more meals per measure. I am not selling the same product for less, I am selling a better product for its worth. I appeal to their intelligence and their long-term satisfaction, not just their immediate thrift. Yet for all the underlying conflict, the market also runs on a powerful, unspoken code of cooperation. Alliances are not just beneficial, they are essential for survival. Lydia, the linen seller, and I have an informal pact. If a customer is looking for fine cloth for a dinner party, she sends them to me for the wine and glassware to match. I in turn send every bride or matron I meet who is setting up a new household directly to her for their linens. This is not charity, it is a symbiotic exchange that enlarges both our customer bases without costing a single as. We also share resources in ways that would surprise an outsider. When a sudden downpour threatens, we all move as one to help each other pull canvas covers over our stalls, knowing that ruined goods for one merchant means a weaker, less vibrant market for all. If a shipment of mine is delayed, Aulus the cheese seller might lend me a few denarii to tide me over, knowing I will do the same for him next week. We share crucial information like a secret currency, which suppliers are reliable, which are selling watered-down wine, when the aediles are planning a strict inspection of weights and measures. This network of mutual aid is our shield against the unpredictability of fate and the whims of the empire's economy. We compete fiercely for each individual customer, but we are ultimately a community, bound together by the shared understanding that while one stall might fall, a strong and thriving marketplace lifts all of our boats. The true secret to success here is knowing precisely when to stand as a rival and when to stand as a brother. The jingle of coinage is the true music of the marketplace, a constant, rhythmic soundtrack to every negotiation and sale. But this isn't a simple matter of handing over cash. The Roman monetary system is a complex world in itself, a physical representation of the empire's vast reach and sometimes its frailties. In my leather coin purse, I carry a miniature history lesson. The heavy brass sestertius is the workhorse of my trade, the standard unit for pricing most of my goods, a sack of grain, a measure of lentils. 4 of the smaller copper asses make a sesterce, a useful division for smaller purchases, but the real prize, the coin that makes my heart beat a little faster, is the silver denarius. Valued at 4 sesterces, its gleam signifies a major transaction, the purchase of an amphora of fine wine or several pieces of delicate glassware. To be paid in denarii is a mark of a successful day. Yet every coin that lands in my palm is immediately subjected to a swift, almost unconscious inspection. Trust may be the foundation of my relationships with fellow merchants, but trust in imperial coinage must be earned with every single piece. Counterfeits and poorly minted coins are a constant plague. My fingers have learned to feel the proper weight of a denarius. A coin that feels too light is immediately suspect, likely silver-plated, lead, or bronze. I bring it to my teeth for a quick, discreet bite. Pure silver is softer and will show a slight mark, while a plated coin will reveal a harder, disappointing core. Then I examine the stamp. Is the emperor's profile clear and well-defined, or is it worn smooth from circulation or sloppy forging? I look for the fine, serrated edges that are intentionally added at the mint to show that no one has shaved off slivers of precious metal. Accepting a bad coin means absorbing its entire loss, a mistake that can wipe out the profit from several good sales. My accounting is a simple, vital ritual performed on a wax tablet I keep tucked beneath my stall. There are no ledgers or complex figures, just a straightforward record of my day. With a stylus, I etch a quick mark for every major sale, a simple code I understand. I note the item, the price agreed upon, and the type of coin I received. At day's end, I will count my total coinage, separate it into what I owe for new stock, what I must set aside for my rent and the temple's safekeeping fee, and what little profit remains. This immediate tactile record keeping is my defense against the chaos of the market. It tells me which goods are moving and which are not, reminding me to adjust my orders or my prices for the next market day. It is the story of my business, written in wax, one transaction at a time, but coin is not always king. There are times, especially after a lean week or when dealing with farmers from the countryside, when the economy reverts to its most ancient form, barter. A customer may approach with a handful of coins, see the price and their face will fall. Then the negotiation takes a different turn. They might offer a fine woven basket from their own farm, a chunk of smoked ham, or a promise of fresh eggs delivered next market day. Assessing the value of barter goods is a different skill entirely. I must instantly calculate the worth of that ham not in coin, but in how many sacks of grain it represents, or whether I can trade it later to the baker for tomorrow's bread. Barter is a slower, more personal transaction, building a different kind of bond. It transforms a simple sale into a network of mutual obligation and future promises, a reminder that beneath the glitter of silver and brass, the market ultimately runs on the real, tangible value of things you can eat, use, or trade onward. The rhythm of the market is dictated by its people, a ceaselessly shifting parade of humanity that flows past my stall. Learning to read this crowd is as crucial as knowing the difference between good garum and bad. In a single hour, I might serve a senator's wife, a legionary fresh from the frontier, and a freedman's cook, each requiring a completely different approach. The patrician matron, her stole of fine wool and the delicate gold filigree on her wrists marking her status, glides through the crowds with an air of detached curiosity, her personal slave trailing a step behind, carrying her purchases. For her, I am the picture of obsequious respect. My tone is lower, my explanations detailed and almost scholarly. I speak of the terroir of the olive groves in Baetica, the masterful craftsmanship of the Syrian glassblower. I am not just selling a product, I am offering her a story of refinement and exclusivity that she can take back to her circle on the Palatine Hill. The transaction is slow, deliberate, and concluded with a respectful nod as her slave steps forward to handle the coins and carry the goods. Then in a whirl of dust and purpose, a legionary might approach. You can spot them 100 paces away. The confident stride, the short, practical haircut, the muscle earned on a march. His needs are direct. He wants good wine, strong cheese, and a fair price. With him, the flattering theatrics fall away. My tone becomes brisk, honest, and laced with a touch of martial camaraderie. This wine will remind you of Campania, soldier, solid, reliable, just like the man who carries it. I might offer him a small taste from a clay cup, a gesture of respect between men of work. He will haggle, but it's a quick, no-nonsense affair. He respects a merchant who doesn't waste his time with flowery speeches, and earning that respect means he'll seek my stall out every time his legion is stationed in the city. The true backbone of my business, however, are the regulars, the plebeian housewives managing a tight budget, and the slaves sent on errands by their masters. For the housewife, I am a partner in her daily struggle. I know her name, Livia, and she knows mine. I might throw an extra handful of lentils into her measure or set aside a slightly bruised but perfectly good pomegranate for her, knowing every has saved matters for her family. Our interactions are warm, familiar, a brief moment of community in the vastness of the city. The slave, harried and under strict orders, presents a different challenge. I treat him with a quiet dignity his master likely does not. I am efficient, clear, and accurate with his change. Showing him respect ensures he will recommend my stall to his fellow slaves and, more importantly, to his master's cook. A trusted slave's opinion carries immense weight in a wealthy household, and his loyalty, once earned, is a powerful engine for repeat business. But not every interaction is smooth. Difficult customers are an inevitable part of the day. There is the chronically suspicious buyer who questions every weight and doubts every claim. With them, patience is the only weapon. I will calmly pour the lentils into their own container, reweigh it on their scale, and invite them to inspect each coin I give them in change. My calm, unflinching transparency is often enough to disarm their suspicion and sometimes even win them over. Then there are the outright thieves, the skilled pickpockets who work the crowded aisles, and the bold ones who attempt to snatch and run. For them, my community is my defense. A sharp, specific cry of thief, not a general alarm, but a precise description, will see half a dozen nearby merchants and even customers immediately block the escape routes. We look out for each other's goods as fiercely as we compete for sales, because a loss for one is an affront to all. This intricate dance with 100 different people each day boils down to one immutable principle: trust is my most valuable stock. A reputation for honest measures, fair prices, and quality goods is the only true currency that never depreciates. It is what transforms a one-time buyer into a lifelong customer, and it is what ensures that when the gates of the Forum close at dusk, I can count my earnings knowing I've earned them with integrity. No merchant, no matter how shrewd or hardworking, could manage a bustling stall in the heart of the Forum entirely on his own. The chaos is too great, the demands too constant. To thrive here is to lead a tiny, impromptu enterprise, and for that, you need hands you can trust. For me, that essential help came in the form of a young man named Marcus. He was my slave, purchased not for a grand sum from the markets on the Capitoline Hill, but acquired years ago from a retiring merchant for a fair price, an investment in the future of my business. Our relationship, like so many in Rome, was a complex tapestry woven from threads of ownership, dependence, and a hard-earned mutual respect. He was not family, but after so many years side by side, he was far more than just property. Marcus's value was immeasurable, his tasks as varied as the market itself. While I focused on the front-of-stall theater of sales and negotiation, he was the engine in the background that kept everything running. His day began even before mine, helping to haul the heavy cart from its overnight storage, his young shoulders taking the strain I could no longer manage alone. He was my head of security, his sharp eyes constantly scanning the crowd not for customers, but for the telltale flicker of fingers that were a little too light. He knew to position himself to block a potential thief's easiest escape route, a silent, imposing presence that discouraged trouble before it began. He managed the flow of inventory, disappearing behind the cart to refill a sack of grain or carefully unwrap a new piece of glassware the moment I gave him the signal. During a rush of customers, he was my second set of hands, taking payment from one client while I wrapped the goods for another, ensuring no one grew impatient and wandered to a competitor's stall. The dynamic between us was a carefully balanced one, dictated by the unspoken rules of Roman society and the practical realities of our shared success. I was the dominus, the master, and that hierarchy was never in question. My word was final on prices, on the quality of goods we accepted in barter, on everything. Yet within that structure there was a significant degree of autonomy and trust. I relied on his judgment. He knew the difference between a good quality amphora and one with a hairline crack that would seep wine. He could assess the weight and legitimacy of a coin as well as I could. After years of listening to my pitches, he even knew which selling points to emphasize for which type of customer. There were times when I was deeply engaged with a valuable patron that he would conduct an entire smaller transaction on his own, accurately weighing out measures of grain or lentils, collecting the payment and placing it securely in the strongbox with a quiet nod to me afterward. His competence directly translated to my profits. This reliance created a bond that transcended the simple master-slave dynamic. I ensured he was well fed, giving him a share of our bread and cheese at lunch, and on a particularly good day, I might even slip him a small copper as or two for himself, a tiny taste of the freedom he might one day earn. We shared jokes about difficult customers once they were out of earshot, and he felt comfortable enough to point out if he thought I was misjudging the mood of a potential buyer. His success was inextricably linked to mine. If my business flourished, his life was better, his workload manageable, and his hope for a future peculium, a savings fund toward his eventual freedom, became more tangible. I was not just his owner, I was his mentor, and in a way he was the guardian of my livelihood. We were a team, a partnership forged in the hot, dusty, demanding crucible of the Roman market, a living testament to the fact that even within the rigid confines of an empire built on servitude, human cooperation could find a way to flourish. But this vibrant, chaotic world of commerce did not run on trust and handshakes alone. Overseeing it all, ensuring the great engine of the market didn't grind to a halt in a morass of fraud and disorder, were the magistrates known as the aediles. To see their lictors, the official attendants, moving through the crowd was to feel a sudden collective intake of breath across the entire forum. Their presence signaled the unwavering eye of the state, and every merchant's posture instinctively straightened, a flicker of anxiety passing behind even the most confident eyes. The aediles were the sheriffs of our marketplace, and their word was law. Their primary duty was to protect the consumer, the lifeblood of Rome, from unscrupulous traders. The most feared of their rituals was the sudden, unannounced inspection of weights and measures. An aedile, his toga edged with the purple stripe of his office, would approach a stall without a word. His attendant would place the official bronze weight, the unassailable standard of the Roman state, onto my scale. My heart would pound, not because I had anything to hide, but because the stakes were so devastatingly high. If my scale was found to be off, even by a tiny, almost imperceptible amount, the consequences were severe. A hefty fine was the immediate penalty, a financial blow that could cripple a small business for weeks. But the true punishment was the public shaming. My faulty scale could be confiscated and displayed like a trophy of deceit, or worse, I could be dragged before the aediles tribunal right there in the forum and subjected to a humiliating public reprimand. In a business built on reputation, such a mark of disgrace was often a death sentence. Customers would simply avoid your stall, their trust irrevocably broken. Their scrutiny didn't end with the scales. The aediles were the guardians of quality and public safety. They could and would inspect the contents of my amphorae. Was the wine I was selling as fine Falernian actually a cheap, watered-down imitation from a local vineyard? Was the grain in my sacks fresh, or was it musty and mixed with chaff to add bulk? Selling spoiled food, especially grain, was considered a serious offense against the public good, punishable by massive fines or even banishment from the market altogether. They also enforced rules on public order. Was my stall obstructing the sacred way? Was the canvas awning I used for shade a potential fire hazard placed too close to another? Every aspect of our operation was subject to their judgment. Navigating this regulatory landscape was a subtle art in itself. It began, like everything in Rome, with understanding social hierarchy. A well-connected patrician running a perfume stall might receive a more cursory, almost courteous inspection from an aedile who was his social equal, or who hoped for his political favor someday. For a common merchant like me, the interaction was strictly business. The key was proactive compliance and visible respect. I made a point of engaging with the aediles' clerks in a friendly, professional manner long before any official inspection. I would show them my personal set of weights, asking if they seemed in order compared to the official standard they carried. This wasn't brown-nosing, it was a strategic display of my commitment to fair practice. When an inspection did occur, my demeanor was one of calm, welcoming cooperation. I would immediately clear a space for them, assist in handling the goods, and answer any questions with clear, direct honesty. The goal was to present myself not as a potential culprit to be caught, but as a conscientious citizen merchant who understood and respected the rules that kept the market fair for everyone. There were also the unofficial, yet unavoidable, costs of doing business. The temple slave who guarded my cart overnight expected a small gratuity for his vigilance. The public slaves who swept the market avenues at the end of the day appreciated a few copper coins tossed into their basket. Even the aediles' own lictors, while fiercely upright in their official duties, might accept a cup of cool water or a piece of fruit on a hot day, a gesture of goodwill that was never explicitly demanded but was understood as part of the complex social lubricant that kept Roman society functioning. It was a delicate dance of giving just enough to show you were a part of the community without ever crossing the line into outright bribery, which was a dangerous game with severe penalties. Ultimately, the aediles, for all the anxiety they inspired, were not the enemy. They were the necessary guardians of the marketplace's integrity. Their strict enforcement, while sometimes heavy-handed, was what allowed a housewife to trust that the measure of grain she bought from me was the same she would get from any other honest merchant. They enforced the level playing field that allowed those of us who relied on our reputation to compete and thrive. Their presence was a constant reminder that in the heart of the empire's greatest market, the rule of law, carved in stone and measured in bronze, was always watching. The thunderous energy of the Forum begins to shift as the sun climbs to its zenith, beating down with an intensity that seems to press the very noise of the market into the cobblestones. The frantic pace of the morning, with its sharp haggling and urgent exchanges, gradually slows to a languid crawl, the crowds thin as sensible Romans retreat from the oppressive heat, seeking shade and respite. For us traders, this is the signal for a sacred ritual, the midday pause. This isn't merely a break for food, it's a necessary recalibration, a chance to let the frantic energy of the marketplace settle like dust in the still, hot air. My first duty is to my stall. I can't simply abandon it. With Marcus's help, we secure the most valuable items, the Syrian glassware, the smaller amphorae of prized garum, back into the locked chest on our cart. We pull a large, coarse-woven canvas sheet over the entire stall, shielding the remaining sacks of grain and lentils from the relentless sun, and more importantly, from the prying eyes of any opportunistic souls who might linger. It's a temporary fortification, a clear sign to everyone that business is suspended. This act of covering up is deeply symbolic. It's the marketplace collectively closing one eye for a precious hour, trusting in the unspoken code that what is covered is not to be touched. With the stall secured, the call of the thermopolium becomes irresistible. These are the ancient world's answer to a fast food counter, and they are our lifeline. My favorite is run by a burly, cheerful Greek named Alexius, whose stall is permanently wreathed in the most wonderful, greasy steam. The line is a familiar congregation of fellow merchants, porters, and slaves, everyone who makes the market run, but has nowhere else to go. The choice is simple, cheap, and hearty. I usually point to the large clay pot kept warm in a bed of hot ashes, the stew, Alexius, and a cup of the house wine. For a couple of copper asses, he ladles out a generous portion of a thick, savory pulse stew, lentils, onions, and perhaps a few mysterious but satisfying bits of meat into a shallow clay bowl. The wine, watered down significantly but pleasantly tart, is served in a simple ceramic cup. This is not a meal for refinement, it is a meal for fuel, consumed quickly while leaning against a sun-warmed column. This is where the market's true community emerges. We gather in whatever slivers of shade we can find beneath the awning of a closed taberna, in the colonnade of a basilica, forming little islands of rest. Aediles, the cheese seller, joins me, and Lydia soon follows, carrying her own bowl of stew. The conversation is immediate and effortless, but it's a world away from the transactional chatter of the morning. We are no longer rivals, we are comrades sharing a brief moment of relief. The talk is not of prices and suppliers, but of shared grievances and small triumphs. Aediles complains good-naturedly about the rising cost of sheep's milk. Lydia shares a hilarious story about a patrician customer who tried to barter for a linen sheet using a visibly sickly chicken. We laugh, we groan in sympathy, we simply sit in comfortable silence for a moment, united by the shared exhaustion of a hard morning's work. This hour is more vital than any meal. It is a psychological reset. The morning's frustrations, the stubborn customer who walked away, the near miss with a pickpocket, are vented and left here in the shade. The successes, the major sale to the legionary, the favorable barter for a new ham, are quietly celebrated among peers who truly understand their significance. We share tips not as competitors but as allies. Someone mentioned seeing a suspicious character loitering near the spice cellars. Another heard a rumor from a courier about a delay in the grain ships from Egypt, news that will send us all adjusting our afternoon prices. In these moments, the marketplace transforms from a brutal arena of competition into a guild, a collective of individuals bound by a common purpose and shared struggle. We finish our wine, the gentle fog of fatigue from the morning beginning to lift, replaced by a steady resolve for the afternoon session. The break is over all too soon, but those 60 minutes of food, friendship, and rest are what recharge us, readying our voices and our wits for the final, demanding push of the day. The afternoon lull is a deceptive thing, a temporary calm that makes you forget the Forum is a living entity with a will of its own. One moment, the air is still and heavy, the heat shimmering off the stone pavement. The next, a sudden, unnatural darkness sweeps across the sky, swallowing the sun whole. It doesn't arrive with a gentle warning. It announces itself with a deep, guttural growl of thunder that seems to roll down from the Capitoline Hill itself. A collective gasp ripples through the market, a single intake of breath from 1,000 people. Every head snaps upward. The once brilliant blue is now a bruised, ominous purple. This is no passing cloud. This is the wrath of Jupiter Pluvius, the rain-bringer, and he shows no mercy. Chaos does not simply arrive. It erupts. The first massive, cold raindrop splatters against my forehead like a thrown pebble. It's followed a heartbeat later by 1,000 more, a deafening drumbeat on every canvas, awning, and stone surface. The orderly world of the market dissolves into a frantic, scrambling panic. This is the moment every merchant fears, a race against the elements where fortunes quite literally can be washed away. My training kicks in, a rehearsed dance of survival I've performed in my mind 100 times. Marcus the grain, the sacks, I shout over the roar of the rain, my voice barely a thread in the storm. There is no time for polite requests or careful deliberation. This is a battle, and my goods are the ground we must defend. We move as one. Marcus is already heaving the heavy sacks of lentils and grain into the bed of our cart, his muscles straining against the weight and the slickness now covering everything. My role is to protect the irreplaceable. I snatch the precious Syrian glass bowls from their display, wrapping them in the same fine linen I used to showcase them, and shove them deep into the locked chest. The amphorae of wine and oil are the greatest worry. Their clay seals can be ruined by water, and their weight makes them impossible to move quickly. I grab the large waxed canvas sheet we keep for exactly this purpose and throw it over them, tying it down securely with ropes that instantly become slippery and difficult to knot. All around us the same scene is playing out in 100 different variations. The cheese seller is desperately trying to drag his wooden counter under the partial cover of the basilica's eaves. The linen merchant is frantically bundling her fine fabrics into a large leather bag, her face a mask of concentration and fear. The air is filled with the shouts of merchants, the screams of startled children, and the angry braying of a donkey spooked by the thunder. But within this pandemonium, something remarkable happens. The fierce competition of the morning vanishes. The man who was my rival for a customer just an hour ago now appears at my elbow, his own goods secured, and helps me heave a stubborn amphora into a more sheltered position. I, in turn, shout a warning to Lydia as a gust of wind threatens to tear the awning from its poles. We are no longer individual businesses. We are a single organism fighting for survival. A collapsed awning 2 stalls down sends a river of water cascading toward my spot. Without a word being spoken, 3 of us immediately grab brooms and begin sweeping the torrent away from our vulnerable stock, a makeshift levee against the flood. It's a raw, unspoken pact. My disaster is your disaster, and your survival helps me survive. As quickly as it arrived, the storm moves on. The deafening drumbeat on the canvas softens to a patter, then ceases. The unnatural darkness lifts, replaced by a clean, washed-out light. The silence that follows is almost as shocking as the noise, broken only by the steady drip of water from every surface and the collective, exhausted sighs of the marketplace. The aftermath is a scene of controlled devastation. Puddles reflect the sky from between the cobblestones. Torn awnings hang limply. Every merchant stands amidst their stall, taking a hurried inventory of the damage. I push my sodden hair from my face, my hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline, and begin the assessment. A few sacks of grain on the edge are damp, but salvageable if I can dry them quickly. The precious glassware is safe. The amphorae, thank the gods, are intact. The loss is minimal. A morning's profit, perhaps in the form of a few water-stained textiles, and the time it will take to put everything right. But the real cost is measured in energy and momentum. The vibrant energy of the market has been doused along with the stalls. The few customers who braved the storm have fled. The rest of the afternoon will not be about sales, it will be about recovery. We will wring out our tunics, reset our stalls, and try to reclaim some semblance of order from the watery chaos. Yet as I look around at my fellow merchants, I see no despair. Instead, I see a hardened resilience, a quiet pride in having weathered another of the Forum's unpredictable trials. We share weary smiles and nods of mutual understanding. The storm has reminded us that for all our rivalries, we are bound together by something far stronger, the shared knowledge that in the face of the Empire's fury, cooperation is the only currency that never loses its value. Yet for all its apparent chaos, this swirling vortex of whispers was far from random noise. It was a sophisticated, rapid response information network, and learning to navigate its currents was a skill as vital as any scale or measuring cup. A sudden hushed discussion among a group of sailors near the fishmonger's stalls might carry the first rumor of a storm, damaging the fleet at Ostia. That wasn't just gossip, it was an early warning that the price of imported garum and fine wine would spike within the week. I'd immediately adjust my own prices on those goods, buying up what I could from panicked sellers who hadn't heard the news yet, securing a small advantage before the wider market caught on. The most prized information, however, always came from the soldiers. A century on leave, their sandals still dusty from the Via Appia, crowding around a thermopolium for wine and hot stew, were walking ledgers of imperial affairs. They didn't discuss politics in the abstract terms of the Senate. They spoke in gritty, tangible details. They'd complain about the poor quality of the bread on the German frontier or the strange new spices the auxiliary troops from the east added to their meals. To me, these weren't just soldiers' gripes, they were data points. Poor bread on the German frontier meant supply lines were stretched, which could signal a prolonged campaign. New spices from the east hinted at trade routes being secured or disrupted by military movements. This kind of intelligence was pure gold. If I heard the legions were being mobilized north, I knew demand for hard cheese, durable leather, and woolen cloaks would soar as equipping officers scrambled to secure supplies. I could position my own orders accordingly. Local scandals and political drama in the city itself had a more immediate, but no less important, impact. The chatter from a senator's slave buying oil might reveal that his master was hosting a lavish dinner for a visiting dignitary that evening. That was a signal. The wealthy and powerful, eager to impress, would be sending their own slaves out with orders to find the very best and most exotic ingredients, regardless of cost. On hearing such a rumor, I would immediately bring my finest, most expensive goods to the front of the stall: the aged Falernian wine, the rare dates from Africa, the most aromatic peppercorns. I'd instruct Marcus to be extra vigilant, knowing these high-value customers would be in a hurry and might be targeted by thieves. A single such event could generate more profit than 3 days of normal trade. This constant intake of information forced me to become an amateur economist and political analyst, making snap judgments that directly affected my livelihood. A whispered rumor of a poor harvest in Sicily meant grain prices across the empire would soon climb. I might use that day's earnings to invest in as much local grain as I could afford, holding it back for a few days to sell at the newly inflated price. Conversely, news of a vast grain ship successfully arriving from Egypt would have the opposite effect, flooding the market and driving prices down. The key was to be among the first to know, to act while the information still held value. In this way, the marketplace was the empire's true nervous system. The official proclamations read from the rostra might decree history, but the gossip of the forum predicted it, allowing those of us who knew how to listen to feel the tremors of change long before they shook the wider world. My stall was not just a place of commerce, it was my listening post, and every customer, from the lowest slave to the highest patrician, was a potential courier from the front lines of empire. But the gods were not just a backdrop to our work, they were active participants in every transaction. Before the first coin of the day even changed hands, my fingers would discreetly brush against a small, worn figurine of Mercury tucked beside my money box. A quick silent prayer for sharp wits and fair deals was as much a part of my opening routine as dusting off my amphory. He was my divine patron, the quick-fingered god of commerce, thieves, and luck, a fitting guardian for the chaotic dance of the market. A tiny libation of wine spilled onto the cobblestones at his feet was a small price to pay for his favor, a spiritual insurance policy against short measures and light-fingered customers. This wasn't blind superstition. It was a practical acknowledgement that some forces governing my success were simply beyond my control. This divine presence extended far beyond my personal devotions. The very rhythm of the market week was dictated by the sacred calendar. Certain days were nefasti, unfit for public business, and no true Roman would dream of conducting significant trade on them, lest they incur the wrath of the gods. On other days, the aediles might suddenly announce the market would close early for a ferie publici, a public festival. This wasn't a mere holiday, it was a civic and religious obligation. The closing of the market gates wasn't a suggestion, it was a divine mandate. The air would grow thick with the scent of roasting meat from public sacrifices, and the sounds of commerce would be replaced by the chanting of priests and the eager chatter of the crowds flowing toward the circus, maximus, or a temple precinct. A forced closure could mean a significant loss of income, but to complain was to risk divine disfavor, a gamble no sensible merchant was willing to take. Yet these religious interruptions were not merely obstacles, they were also immense opportunities. The festivals themselves created a surge of potential customers. A day at the chariot races meant thousands of hungry, celebratory people flooding the city. While my main stall in the Forum might be closed, I could secure a temporary spot along the processional route or near the circus, selling pre-packaged snacks, cups of wine, and celebratory garlands. The customer's mindset shifted entirely during these events. They were there to enjoy themselves, to partake in the collective joy of the city, and were often far more free with their spending. A well-placed stall during the Ludi Romani could generate a week's worth of ordinary profit in a single afternoon, all under the watchful, approving eye of the god being honored. The most fascinating aspect was observing how religious belief directly influenced customer behavior. A household slave sent to buy ingredients for a family sacrifice demanded the absolute highest quality. The wine had to be the finest, the grain the purest white, the animal without blemish. To provide anything less was not just poor business, it was to risk contaminating their master's offering and bringing misfortune upon their entire household. The haggling, so fierce on a normal day, often vanished in these sacred transactions. The price was almost secondary to the perceived purity and suitability of the goods for divine consumption. Conversely, a customer might suddenly become incredibly generous, purchasing an extra measure of olives or a finer cut of meat than usual, explaining it was an offering to the lares, the protective spirits of their home, in gratitude for a piece of good fortune. In these moments, commerce became intertwined with piety, and my stall transformed from a simple shop into a conduit between the mortal and the divine. This constant interplay between profit and prayer was a defining feature of Roman life. There was no separation between the secular and the sacred. They were woven together into a single, inseparable fabric. A successful sale was a sign of Mercury's favor. A sudden downpour that ruined a competitor's goods might be seen as the intervention of Jupiter Pluvius. The marketplace, for all its earthly grit and noise, was a profoundly spiritual arena. Every transaction carried the weight of potential divine blessing or displeasure, making the simple act of selling a sack of grain part of a much larger, ongoing conversation with the gods who shaped the destiny of Rome itself. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the Capitoline Hill, casting long, deep shadows across the Forum, the energy of the marketplace undergoes a final, dramatic transformation. The languid pace of the midday lull is gone, replaced by a new, urgent rhythm. The last chance economy, the crowds, having rested during the heat of the day, return with a different purpose. These are the bargain hunters, the cooks realizing they're short an ingredient for the evening meal, and the slaves sent with a final errand and a dwindling purse. Our strategy must shift just as drastically. The careful, quality-focused pitches of the morning give way to a more direct and pragmatic approach. This is no longer about maximizing profit on each item. It is about converting every last piece of stock into coin before the gates are closed and the day's opportunity is lost. Perishable goods become the immediate focus of this final campaign. The round of sheep's cheese from Aulus's stall, which was a premium product just a few hours ago, now sits under a slightly weary-looking cloth. He knows and I know that if it doesn't sell today, its value will plummet by tomorrow morning. I see him hold it up, his voice cutting through the din with a new, sharper tone. Last one, a fine pecorino, half the morning's price to a good home. This isn't just a sale, it's a rescue mission. I follow suit. The basket of figs, plump and perfect at dawn, now looks a little less firm. I move them to the very front of my stall and adopt a similar tactic. Fresh figs, too many for my cart, make me an offer. The goal is to create a sense of fleeting opportunity, a final chance to secure a quality item at a price that feels like a minor victory for the customer. We are not desperate, we are practical, acknowledging the undeniable truth that food has a clock and that clock is ticking down. My sales tactics become more assertive, my voice projecting further. The measured, informative tone I use for the patrician matron is shelved. Now I engage people directly as they pass by. You, sir, a legionary with a keen eye. You look like a man who appreciates a strong wine at the end of a long day. This companion will fortify your evening for a price that will please your centurion's paymaster. It's a bold, familiar approach that would have been far too forward in the morning, but now it cuts through the crowd's inertia. I make eye contact, I gesture broadly, I smile freely. The performance is less about refined elegance and more about cheerful, persuasive energy. I bundle items together, creating irresistible value propositions. Buy this amphora of oil and I'll throw in a sack of lentils for just 5 extra asses, a feast for your entire contubernium. The psychology is simple. Make the deal so good that walking away feels like a loss. Simultaneously, Marcus and I begin the delicate ballet of closing down. This is a strategic display, not a surrender. We never want the stall to look abandoned or closed for business, but we must begin the arduous process of securing everything for the journey home. While I am out front turning up the charm and closing deals, Marcus is in the background conducting a silent inventory. He quietly consolidates half-empty sacks of grain into fuller ones. He carefully rewraps the unsold glassware and pottery, securing them in the locked chest on the cart. He starts to break down the wooden display stands, stacking them neatly. This activity itself becomes a sales tool. A customer hesitating over a piece of salmon where I might see Marcus packing similar items away. Last chance for this fine piece, I'll say, nodding toward the activity. Once it's in the chest, it's locked away until next market day. The visual cue of things being put away creates a powerful finality that can spur the indecisive into action. This final hour is a whirlwind of tiny negotiations and swift decisions. The hardline haggling of the morning softens considerably. If a customer offers a price that is even marginally above my absolute cost, I am likely to agree with a theatrical sigh and a handshake, congratulating them on their shrewdness. The goal is to turn inventory into capital, to end the day with as few unsold goods as possible, especially those that are fragile or perishable. Every coin that goes into the strongbox now is one less thing to haul home and worry about. The light continues to fade, painting the grand temples and basilicas in shades of orange and gold, a beautiful backdrop to our frantic human activity. The calls of the merchants become more persistent, the footsteps of the customers more hurried. We are all racing against the dying of the light, each of us trying to secure our own small victory before the great market of Rome closes its eyes for the night. The final call of the aediles' horn echoes across the forum, a deep, mournful sound that signals the official end of the trading day. It's not a suggestion, it is a command. The great marketplace, which has thrummed with life for hours, must now fall silent. The change is immediate and profound. The shouts of merchants, the chatter of customers, the clink of coin, it all ceases, replaced by a new, unified purpose, the methodical work of closing down. The frantic energy of the last chance economy evaporates and a weary, practiced efficiency takes its place. My body aches from hours of standing on hard stone. My throat is raw from bargaining, but my mind is still sharp, focused on the final, critical tasks of securing my livelihood. Every item on my stall is now assessed not for its sales potential, but for its vulnerability. The process is a reverse of the morning's ritual, performed with a tired deliberateness. Marcus and I work in a well-rehearsed silence, our movements economical. The few remaining less perishable goods, the sacks of grain and lentils, the sealed amphorae are loaded first into the cart, creating a solid, heavy base. The empty sacks that held the sold goods are folded and tucked into any available space. Nothing of value is left behind. Then comes the careful part. The locked chest is opened and the unsold valuables, the Syrian glassware, the smaller, expensive jars of spices, are nestled deep within, swaddled in their protective linens. Each piece is a hope for tomorrow's trade, and its safety is paramount. Finally, the heavy canvas sheet is drawn over the entire cart and lashed down with thick ropes, creating an anonymous, bundled shape that reveals nothing of the worth it contains. With the physical stock secured, the financial reckoning begins. This is a private moment, often conducted sitting on the cart step or leaning against a column, using my body as a shield. My wax tablet comes out, its faint markings from the day's sales now my most important text. I count the coins from the leather strongbox, my fingers automatically sorting them by type and checking their weight. The clink of bronze and silver is the day's final melody. I separate the takings into piles with a grim practicality. This small pile is for Marcus's peculium, the tiny savings toward his freedom that I am contractually and morally bound to set aside. This larger portion is for the wholesaler I owe for last week's wine shipment. What remains is my own, a sum to be divided between rent for my tiny room, the temple's safekeeping fee for the cart, the cost of tomorrow's stock, and if the gods and my wits have smiled upon me, a slender margin of profit. This daily accounting is a stark, unvarnished report card on my skill, my luck, and my place in the world. The emotional tally is just as significant, though it is counted in the heart, not on wax. A good day, one with strong sails, fair weather, and no major disputes, leaves me with a profound, bone-deep satisfaction that makes the aches worthwhile. It's a quiet pride, a feeling of having successfully navigated the empire's most demanding arena through my own knowledge and effort. I might even allow myself the luxury of buying a cup of unmixed wine from Alexius's Thermopolium, sharing a brief, tired joke with Aulus or Lydia as they perform their own reckonings. But a bad day, one ruined by a spoiled shipment, a devastating storm, or simply a fickle crowd that never materialized, brings a different kind of fatigue. It's a heavy weight of frustration and anxiety, the grim knowledge that tomorrow's struggle will be even harder to make up the difference. In these moments, the walk home feels longer, the stairs to my insula steeper, the city's noise more grating. As Marcus and I take our places to haul the cart back through the now quieting streets, I cast one last look over my shoulder at the Forum. The transformation is always breathtaking. The space that was so recently a cauldron of noise and commerce is now becoming a vast empty stage. The only sounds are the scraping of brooms as public slaves clear away the day's litter, discarded olive pits, broken pottery, the scattered straw that padded our goods. The magnificent public buildings, their details softened by the twilight, stand silent and imposing, their purpose for the day complete. The sense of community among the merchants, so vital during the hours of trade, now dissipates as we all retreat into our private worlds, each of us carrying our own unique balance of triumph and worry back to our homes across the city. The marketplace, the great heart of Rome, has finished its daily beat, and we, its lifeblood, flow quietly back into the veins of the city, already resting and preparing for the next dawn's call. Sitting on the worn step of my cart, using its solid wooden side as a desk and a shield, the true measure of the day begins. The Forum is nearly empty now, the sounds of commerce replaced by the distant calls of families and the scraping of brooms. This moment of reckoning is a private ritual as vital as any sale. My leather coin purse feels satisfyingly heavy as I pour its contents onto the wax tablet in my lap, a chaotic pile of bronze, brass, and the occasional welcome glint of silver. The first step is to bring order to this metallic chaos, to transform a jumble of coinage into a clear story of success or struggle. My fingers, calloused and stained, move with practiced efficiency, sorting the coins into separate piles with a soft clinking sound. The large, heavy asses and sestertii I form the bulk of the day's take, the workhorses of my trade. Each one is given a swift but thorough inspection, my thumb testing the edge for signs of clipping, my teeth giving a discreet bite to any suspicious denarius to feel for the soft give of true silver beneath. A single bad coin accepted in haste could erase the profit from a dozen good sales. This tactile inspection is a final defense against the day's deceptions. Once sorted, I begin the count, my lips moving silently. 4 asses to a sestertius, 4 sestertii to a denarius. The math is simple, but the numbers themselves hold my fate. This is where the wax tablet truly earns its keep. Its surface, marked with my simple, etched code from throughout the day, is my guide. I cross-reference the tally of coins with the informal ledger of sales. A mark for the sale of 2 amphorae of Campanian wine, another for 5 sacks of lentils, a special notation for the sale of the Syrian glass bowl. The numbers must align. A discrepancy means a mistake in my counting, or worse, a theft I failed to notice. A sigh of relief escapes me as the totals match. The physical coin in my hand perfectly reflects the sales recorded in wax. This congruence is the first small victory of the evening, but the total sum of coin is not my profit. It is merely raw revenue. Now comes the subtraction, the part that separates a prosperous merchant from one merely surviving. From the pile, I first remove Marcus's peculium, the small but legally mandated savings that belong to him, a few copper coins set aside for the distant hope of his freedom. It is a debt of honor, Next, and much larger, is the portion owed to my suppliers. I know exactly how many denarii I must set aside for the wholesaler who advanced me the wine last week, and for the farmer who brought the lentils from Ostia on credit. Failure to have this sum ready when the collector comes tomorrow would shatter the hard-won trust that allows my business to function. This money was never truly mine, it is simply passing through my hands. What remains after these obligations is my own. This final, smaller pile is the day's true yield. From this, I must mentally carve out yet more portions. A few coins must go to the keeper of the insula for my rent, a constant drain that cares nothing for a slow market day. Another coin is for the temple slave who guarded my cart overnight, a necessary gratuity. What is left must then be divided in two. One half is for tomorrow, the capital needed to purchase new stock, to restock the lentils, and perhaps secure a new amphora of oil if the price is right. This reinvestment is essential. A stall that does not refresh its goods is a stall that dies. The final few coins, if any remain, are the true profit. This is what will buy my evening meal, perhaps a slightly better wine than the watered-down Pascha, and what might over many weeks be saved toward a woolen cloak for winter, or in my most ambitious dreams, a down payment on a permanent taberna with a solid roof. The pressure is a constant, invisible weight. This isn't just about my comfort, it's about survival. A string of bad days means dipping into that reinvestment fund for rent, which means a poorer stall the next day, which leads to even fewer sales, a downward spiral that has consumed better merchants than I. The margin between success and failure is terrifyingly thin, measured in a handful of copper coins counted under the fading light of the Roman sky. This daily financial reckoning is the quiet, unglamorous reality behind the shouting and the haggling, the sobering arithmetic of a life spent at the mercy of the market's whims. The walk home feels longer at the end of a market day, the weight of exhaustion shifting from my mind to my feet as I leave the grand emptiness of the Forum behind. Marcus and I haul the cart through narrowing streets, the grandeur of marble and travertine giving way to the cramped, towering reality of the subura. This is my world, a stark contrast to the ordered spectacle of the Forum. The air changes, thickening with the pungent aroma of 1,000 suppers cooking over small fires, stewed leeks, frying fish, the smoky scent of cheap lamp oil. The sounds are more intimate, more chaotic, a baby's relentless cry from an upper floor, the shriek of an argument behind a closed door, the raucous laughter spilling from a crowded popina on the corner. Navigating these streets after dark is a skill born of long experience. The open sewers that run down the center of the alleyways, barely noticeable in the daylight bustle, now become treacherous channels in the dim light. We guide the cart with extra care, its wheels bouncing over the uneven cobblestones, avoiding the worst of the refuse. Shadows cling to the deep doorways and narrow passages between the insulae, and my hand rests more protectively on the purse at my belt. This is not a place for the unwary. We move with purpose, our pace brisk but not hurried, avoiding eye contact with the clusters of young men loitering in the dim glow of a tavern's doorway. It's a dance of awareness, knowing which sounds are the normal chorus of subura life and which signal potential trouble. Yet for all its roughness, this is also a neighborhood, a place of fierce, gritty community. As we approach my insula, the scene shifts. The grim-faced porter, a hulking former gladiator named Caius, gives a curt nod from his stool by the entrance, his presence a necessary deterrent against the theft that plagues these crowded buildings. Long day, Gaius, he grunts, not really expecting an answer, but the exchange is a ritual that affirms I belong here. Then the familiar call of my neighbor, old Marta, leans out of her ground-floor window, her face etched by a lifetime of hard work. "Any luck with the lentils?" she asks, her voice raspy. She's not just making conversation. She's been waiting to see if my success means I might have a few spare coins for the delicious flatbreads she sells to supplement her income. This is the subura's real economy, not just coins, but favors, information, and small kindnesses traded for survival. Securing the cart for the night is the final, vital task. It doesn't come inside. There's no space. Instead, for a few asses, I pay the son of the building's owner to chain it to a heavy iron ring set into the wall of the courtyard, his mastiff dog tethered nearby as a further discouragement. It's a fragile security, a constant worry that gnaws at the edge of my mind, but it's the best this life offers. Only then, with my livelihood as protected as it can be, do I finally climb the stairs. They are dark, steep, and worn smooth by countless footsteps, the air smelling of damp plaster and cooking smoke. Each flight is a journey into a different layer of the city's life, the noises and smells shifting until I reach my own door on the 4th floor, high above the chaos but never truly separate from it. The climb is a daily penance, a physical affirmation of my place in the world, ending in the small, sparse room that is my solitary refuge from the demanding, magnificent, and exhausting heart of Rome. But my day doesn't end with the climb up those dark stairs. The world of a Roman trader extends far beyond the physical stall. Our most valuable deals are often struck not over scales, but over cups of wine. Shedding my dusty tunic for a slightly cleaner one, the pull of the evening is not towards solitude, but toward the warm, noisy glow of the local tavern. This isn't mere relaxation, it's the second shift, the invisible marketplace where information, trust, and opportunity are the real currencies traded long after the forum gates have closed. The tavern is a world apart from the formal hierarchies of the day. Here, nestled amongst the smoky haze of oil lamps and the earthy scent of spilled wine, the distinctions between a stallholder like me and a well-off tabernarius with a permanent shop momentarily blur. We are all just merchants now, united by shared exhaustion and the universal language of commerce. Finding a spot at a long wooden table crowded with familiar faces, the first sip of unwatered wine is a balm for my raw throat. The conversation starts not with business, but with the shared complaints of the day, the outrageous price of olive oil from a new supplier, the audacity of a particular customer, the sheer relief of having survived another market day under the watchful eye of the aediles. This shared venting is a crucial release valve, a way to shed the day's frustrations before the real work of the evening begins. Then, almost imperceptibly, the talk shifts. Aediles the cheese seller leans in, his voice dropping from a hearty bellow to a confidential murmur. I heard from a ship's captain at the river port, he might say, that a storm wrecked 2 grain freighters off Corsica. This single sentence passed over a clay cup is more valuable than the wine itself. That gossip is an early warning system. It means the price of Sicilian grain will skyrocket in a week. The knowledge allows me to adjust my own purchases tomorrow, perhaps buying a little extra from a supplier who hasn't heard the news yet, securing a small advantage. This is how fortunes are made and lost, not in the public shouting of the forum, but in the quiet whispers of the tavern after dark. For those of us in specific trades, the true heart of our evening networking lies within the collegium. My collegium, the Association of Grain and Dry Goods Merchants, meets in a modest room above a baker's shop, its walls stained with smoke and the faint, sweet smell of baking bread. Paying my monthly dues to this group is one of the smartest investments I make. Here among my direct peers, the cooperation truly deepens. We are a guild, a brotherhood. If a member falls ill or his cart is damaged, a collection is taken up from the common fund to support his family until he can work again. We share the names of reliable ship captains and warn each other about dishonest wholesalers who mix sand with their grain. We even negotiate as a block with larger suppliers, using our collective purchasing power to secure better prices than any of us could manage alone. These connections forge bonds that are both professional and deeply personal. The older, experienced merchants, their faces lined with decades of sun and calculation, become unofficial mentors. They might pull me aside and offer advice I'd never pay for, explaining the subtle signs of a coming shortage or how to properly store Egyptian lentils through the humid summer months. In return, I offer my younger perspective and my strong back to help them unload a particularly heavy shipment. It's a system built on reciprocal obligation and respect. A recommendation from a senior member of the collegium can open doors to suppliers who would otherwise ignore a solitary stallholder. Your reputation within these 4 walls is your most guarded asset, worth more than any single day's profit. This network is our ultimate insurance policy in a world without any safety net. It is a web of mutual support that catches us when fate deals a harsh blow. Hearing that a fellow collegium member's son has taken a fever, we don't just offer sympathy, we quietly ensure his stall is manned the next day by a rotation of his peers, so his income doesn't vanish while he tends to his family. This is the unspoken pact. We compete fiercely under the sun, but when one of us stumbles, the community rallies. The laughter and earnest conversation that fill these evening gatherings are the glue that holds our fragile livelihoods together. transforming a collection of rival businessmen into a genuine community, bound by shared struggle and the unwavering certainty that in the vast, impersonal machine of Rome, no one should have to face its challenges alone. But the life of a Roman trader was never just about the stall. It was a constant, exhausting tug of war between the roaring demands of the Forum and the quiet needs of the home. For many of us, the climb up those dark stairs to the insula wasn't an escape from work, but an entry into a second, equally demanding shift. My role didn't end when I secured the cart for the night. It simply changed its shape. In a society built on the absolute authority of the paterfamilias, the male head of household, my success or failure in the marketplace didn't just affect me. It dictated the security, status, and survival of everyone under my roof. For a fortunate few, merchants who had prospered enough to afford a house, domestic life might have involved a wife, children, and perhaps a slave or two to help manage the household. Their home could be a small sanctuary, a place where the paterfamilias was treated with respect and his earnings provided a stable, if modest, existence. His wife, while legally subject to his authority, often managed the day-to-day finances of the home with shrewd efficiency, stretching his earnings to cover food, clothing, and the endless social obligations that glued Roman society together. His children might even be afforded the rare luxury of an education, a hope that they could ascend to a less physically taxing life, perhaps as a scribe or a minor official. My reality, however, was the reality of most. I lived alone in that single rented room. My family was not in Rome, but in a small village a hard day's journey away. This separation was not a choice born of desire, but one of brutal economic necessity. Supporting two households, paying rent in the city, while also sending money and goods back to my aging parents and siblings, was a relentless financial strain. Every sestertii I counted at dusk had to be divided not just between rent and reinvestment, but also set aside for the monthly trip home with a sack of grain, a jar of oil, and whatever coins I could spare. My work in the Grand Forum was what sustained their humble existence on a small farm that could barely feed them. The pressure was immense and unending. A bad week at market meant tightened belts not just for me, but for them. My identity was split. In Rome, I was Gaius the merchant, a man of my own making. At home, I was the son, the provider, the one who had ventured into the heart of the empire and was expected to return with its bounty. This balancing act consumed every waking thought. The market schedule was unforgiving, leaving little time for the traditional Roman ideal of domestic leisure. There were no long hours spent reclining at a family meal for me. My evenings were often spent not in relaxation, but in maintenance, mending a tear in my tunic by lamplight, repairing a loose handle on my scale, or preparing small batches of herbs and simples I could sell as remedies alongside my other goods. Even my socializing in the tavern, while vital for business, was a form of work, a necessary investment in the network that kept my enterprise afloat. The concept of separating work life from home life was a luxury I simply could not afford. My room was my storeroom, my office, and my home, all crammed into a few square feet of space. The dust of the grain market settled on my few personal possessions, and the worry over tomorrow's prices was my constant, unwelcome bedfellow. For those traders who did have their families with them in the city, the lines blurred even further. A wife might act as a business partner in all but name, managing the stall when her husband was negotiating with suppliers or keeping a sharp eye on the slaves. Children from a very young age were not sheltered from this life. They were part of the workforce. A son might be tasked with chasing off stray dogs or keeping the flies away from the food, while a daughter could help her mother measure out small quantities of lentils or beans for customers. The family unit was not separate from the commercial enterprise. It was the enterprise. Its survival depended on every member playing their part, their collective fates riding on the whims of the market, the weather, and the health of the man who stood at its head, bearing the full weight of his title as paterfamilias and all the immense, lonely responsibility that came with it. The physical price of a life in the Forum is one paid in a slow, steady currency of aches and exhaustion, a toll extracted by the very stones of Rome. From the first moment I take my place at the stall to the final horn of the aedile, my body is not my own. It is a tool of the trade, subjected to a relentless barrage of demands. The most immediate and constant adversary is the unyielding cobblestone beneath my feet. There are no chairs, no moments of rest. To sit is to appear idle, to signal a lack of business, and so we stand. For 10, 12, sometimes 14 hours, the pressure builds in the soles of my feet, a dull, throbbing pain that climbs up through the calves and settles as a permanent knot in the small of my back. By day's end, my posture is a testament to this endurance, a slight unconscious stoop developed from hours of leaning over scales and amphorae, a physical signature of my profession etched into my very frame. We are utterly exposed to the whims of the elements, our well-being dictated by the mood of the gods. The summer sun is a brutal tyrant, its heat reflecting off the pale stone of the Forum with a blinding intensity that cooks the very air. Wrapped in my tunic and leather apron, I feel the sweat tracing paths through the dust on my skin, a constant trickle that stings the eyes and soaks into the wool. Dehydration is a silent, creeping threat, the dry throat and lightheadedness a constant battle fought with watery wine from a clay jug. I've seen strong men succumb to the heat, collapsing where they stood, their stalls left unattended until a relative or fellow merchant could secure their goods. And then with shocking swiftness, the sky can darken and a torrential downpour soaks everything to the bone. There is no true shelter. The cold that follows seeps into the joints, a deep chill that lingers long after the sun returns, leaving me shivering in my damp clothes, the precursor to the rattling coughs and fevers that sweep through the market with the changing seasons. Perhaps the most insidious hazard, however, is the invisible one that hangs in the very air we breathe and teems on every surface. The marketplace is a paradise of filth, a world of stunning contrast where exquisite delicacies are sold just paces away from open sewers and rotting refuse. Flies swarm from the fishmonger stalls to my sacks of grain in a continuous, buzzing migration. The same hand that accepts a coin from a sailor just off a ship from Alexandria might then be used to handle a piece of fruit I offer to a customer. There is no understanding of germs, only a general awareness that crowded places and bad smells often lead to sickness. Illness is a constant specter. A stomach ailment from spoiled food can lay me low for days, a catastrophic loss of income when every day's trade is essential. Worse are the fevers that sweep through the city, the mysterious agues that leave a man weak and wasting, his livelihood vanishing while he fights for his life in a cramped, airless room. Our medical knowledge is a patchwork of folk wisdom, desperate superstition, and the expensive, often brutal, interventions of Greek physicians we can scarcely afford. My first and most reliable defense is a strict personal code of cleanliness. Despite the overall filth of the city, I am fastidious. I wash my hands and face repeatedly throughout the day from a small basin of water I keep behind the stall, scrubbing with a rough cloth and a paste of ashes and olive oil. I avoid touching my face, a hard-learned lesson. For the aches and pains, I rely on the sharp, cleansing burn of a liniment made from wine, mustard seed, and rue, massaged into my sore feet and back each evening, a painful ritual that at least promises a morning where I can stand once more. When true illness strikes, we turn to the wisdom of the older merchants and the herbs sold by the numerous remedy women in the market. For a fever, a poultice of crushed willow bark might be bound to the forehead. For a racking cough, a foul-tasting tea of honey, thyme, and horehound is the remedy. We wear amulets against the evil eye, believed to be the cause of sudden maladies, and make small offerings to Febris, the goddess of fever, in hope she will pass over our households. These methods are our only shield. A visit to a proper doctor is a last resort, a terrifying gamble that might involve bleeding, purges, or treatments more dangerous than the disease itself, all for a cost that could bankrupt a family. So we endure, we learn to listen to the whispers of our bodies, to push through the pain, to rely on the small preventatives, and the hope that the gods will grant us the strength to stand once more when the dawn calls us back to our place in the great, glorious, and grinding machine of the Roman market. The threat of crime was a constant, humming undercurrent to the market's vibrant energy, a shadow that lengthened with every coin that landed in my strongbox. In the dense, jostling crowds, anonymity was a cloak worn by both honest customer and cunning thief. My stall was not just a business, it was a fortress that needed defending, and my most valuable asset was not my goods, but my own relentless, practiced vigilance. I learned to see the marketplace with a split vision, one eye on the customer before me, negotiating the price of lentils, and the other constantly scanning the periphery for the telltale signs of danger. The most common threat was the light-fingered opportunist, the pickpocket who used the crowd's press as his weapon. They worked in teams, a masterful diversion executed with chilling precision. One might approach the front of my stall, engaging me in a loud, distracting argument over a price he had no intention of paying, while his accomplice, often a young child small enough to slip unseen, would weave through the crowd behind me, their quick fingers aiming for the leather purse at my belt or a smaller, valuable item left momentarily unattended on the cart. My defense against this was a ritual of constant, subtle movement. I never stood still. I would shift my weight, turn slightly, my hand often resting casually on my purse, my body acting as a living barrier between my earnings and the chaos. Every time I bent to lift a sack, I would automatically glance behind me, a quick sweep of the eyes that became as instinctive as breathing. Then there were the bolder criminals, the ones who relied on speed and shock. A running grab was a terrifyingly effective tactic. A figure would burst from the crowd, snatch an amphora of wine or a whole sack of grain from the edge of my stall, and vanish back into the throng before I could even cry out. The sheer audacity and speed of the act left you stunned and infuriated. To counter this, I developed a strategy of placement. Nothing of high value was ever left on the periphery. The most vulnerable goods were kept in the center of the stall or required a deliberate act to retrieve, forcing a thief to commit fully and giving Marcus or me that crucial extra second to react. My voice too was a weapon. I learned not to shout a general alarm which would just cause confusion, but to issue a sharp, specific call. Stop him in the gray tunic. Thief, a targeted cry like that would instantly turn the surrounding crowd into an unwitting net, their heads snapping around to identify the culprit, their bodies unconsciously blocking his path. The ultimate deterrent, however, was the community itself. We merchants were a flock of birds, each one watching for the hawk. A suspicious character loitering near my stall would earn a sharp, meaningful look from Alice the cheese seller. Lydia from her linen stall would give a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head if she saw a known troublemaker working the crowd. This silent network of looks and nods was our first and most effective line of defense. If a theft did occur, the response was swift and collective. The cry of thief would see nearby stallholders abandon their own customers to form a human chain, blocking the obvious escape routes through the forum's alleys. We looked out for each other not out of mere friendship, but out of the shared understanding that a crime against one was an affront to all. A market known for lawlessness was a market that would drive away the customers we all relied on. For more serious threats of violent altercation, a fire, or organized gang, we relied on the distant hope of the vigiles. These watchmen, Rome's closest thing to a police and fire brigade, were a rare sight in the heart of the Forum during the day. They were primarily nocturnal, patrolling the dark, fire-prone streets of the city's districts. Their presence in the market was usually reactive, not preventive. If a situation escalated beyond our control, a runner would be sent to find the nearest vigile's post, but by the time they arrived, the damage was often done. We knew that our primary security rested on our own shoulders, on our sharp eyes, and on the unspoken pact we had with our fellow merchants. The strongbox chained to my cart, the dagger I kept discreetly sheathed beneath my apron, the constant, wearying vigilance, these were the true guardians of my livelihood. They were the price of doing business in the greatest market on earth, a daily tax paid not in coin, but in unwavering attention and the quiet, simmering anxiety that every successful trader learned to carry as their constant, invisible burden. Standing here in the fading light, counting the day's coins, it's impossible not to reflect on the invisible walls that shape our lives. My existence is a paradox of freedom and constraint. I am a free-born Roman citizen, a status that grants me rights a slave can only dream of. I can legally own property, make contracts, and my body is not someone else's to command. Yet the gulf between my life and that of a senator on the Palatine Hill is so vast it might as well be an ocean. We breathe the same air, walk the same stones, but we inhabit entirely different worlds. My citizenship is my shield, but it is not a ladder. The dream, the tantalizing possibility that drives every merchant who isn't simply waiting to die at his stall, is to accumulate enough wealth to ascend. We call it the cursus pecuniae, the course of money, a parallel to the political ladder the elite climb. It's a slow, grinding ascent. Every sestertii is saved from the clutches of rent, suppliers, and misfortune is a step. The goal for a man like me isn't a senatorship. That is for the ancient landed families. The dream is to become an ex, a knight, to join the equestrian order, a man must possess a stable fortune of at least 400,000 sesterces. It's a sum so large it feels mythological, a number I calculate on my wax tablet sometimes just to feel the sheer weight of it. To reach it would mean not just a change in wealth, but a transformation in being. It would mean a gold ring on my finger, the right to sit in the reserved seats at the theater, and a status that commands instant respect from magistrates and patricians alike. My children, should I ever afford a family, could then enter the ranks of the minor magistrates, the real administrators of the empire. My struggle then isn't just for my own comfort, it's to plant a flag on a social peak so that those who come after me might start their climb from a higher point. But this dream is perpetually tempered by a sobering reality. For every story of a freedman like the fabulously wealthy Trimalchio, who rose from slavery to dizzying riches, there are 1,000 stories of men like me who simply tread water until they drown. The obstacles are immense: a single disaster, a shipwreck that takes my entire inventory, a fire that destroys my insula, a prolonged illness that keeps me from my stall, can wipe out a decade of careful saving in an afternoon. The elite, with their vast, diversified wealth from land, rents, and political spoils, can absorb such blows. I cannot. Furthermore, old money views new money with a mixture of disdain and suspicion. A senator might deign to buy my wine, but he would never invite me to dine at his table. My accent, my calloused hands, my lack of knowledge about Greek poetry and aristocratic etiquette, these are indelible marks of my origin that no amount of coin can fully erase. Social mobility in Rome is less a ladder and more a treacherous slope. It is possible to climb, but it is agonizingly slow and easy to slide back down. My position is one of a frustrating and fascinating in-between. I look down toward the slaves and freedmen and feel a surge of pride in my autonomy. I answer to no master's whip. The profits from my stall, however meager, are my own. I can look a soldier in the eye as a legal equal. Yet when I look up toward the elite, I am utterly invisible. My life is one of constant, calculated negotiation, not just in the market, but with fate itself. I have more control over my destiny than a slave, but far less than a nobleman born into a fortune. This liminal space is where most of Rome truly lies, in the tense, hopeful, and exhausting gap between what we are and what we dare to dream we might become. Our worth is measured not by our bloodline, but by our balance sheet, and that is a terrifying, liberating truth that defines every sunrise and every painfully counted coin. So here I stand as the last light of day fades from the Forum stones, my body weary but my mind alive with the echo of 1,000 transactions. It is a life of stark contrasts, this existence as a Roman trader. The exhilarating high of a perfectly struck deal with a discerning legionary, the taste of his silver denarius on my tongue, is matched only by the crushing low of watching a sudden spring storm turn a week's worth of grain into a sodden, unsellable mass. The profound satisfaction of building a reputation for honest measure and fair value exists alongside the constant, gnawing anxiety that a single bad day, a single dishonest supplier, or a single illness could unravel it all. We are the masters of our tiny commercial domains, yet forever at the mercy of forces far beyond our control. The weather that delays ships, the politics that disrupts trade routes, the whims of the gods themselves. This microcosm of struggle and success, this tiny stall, is in truth a perfect window into the vast beating heart of the ancient economy. Every sack of grain I sell, every amphora of oil I broker, is a single thread in the magnificent, intricate tapestry of empire. We traders were the essential connective tissue, the vital network that moved goods from the fertile fields of Egypt and the vineyards of Campania to the tables of citizens 1,000 miles away. The price of my lentils was a direct reflection of the harvest in Sicily, the peace on the Germanic frontier, the efficiency of the shipping lanes. In our relentless pursuit of profit, in our keen ear for gossip and our sharp eye for opportunity, we didn't just participate in the economy, we were the economy, a living, breathing, shouting embodiment of Rome's commercial spirit. To understand our daily grind is to understand how the empire truly functioned, not from the top down through edicts and laws, but from the ground up through the call and response of supply and demand, shouted across the crowded stones of the Forum. Now I must return to my insula to rest my aching feet and prepare for the dawn's next challenge. But before I go, I leave you with this final thought. For a moment, try to truly stand in my worn sandals. Feel the weight of a sack of grain on your shoulder, the slickness of a dubious coin between your fingers, the thrill of a haggling match one. Which part of this life calls to you? Was it the intricate social dance, reading a customer's status in the hem of their tunic, the constant threat of disaster from pickpockets to sudden storms? Or perhaps it was the hidden language of the market, the way a whispered rumor could change the price of goods across the entire city. Let me know what captured your imagination most in the comments below. Your curiosity is what keeps these ancient stories alive, turning the dust of history into a world we can all walk through together.